Every single year, over 350 million crossings happen at the U.S. Mexico border, and every single day, thousands of Americans, U.S. citizens, say things to customs agents that get them pulled into secondary inspection, have their phones seized, their cars torn apart, and in some cases, face criminal charges. Not because they did anything wrong, but because they said the wrong thing, or they didn't know what the law actually allows, and what it does not allow. And today in this video, I'm covering 3 things that most people never find out until it's too late. First, the 3 mistakes Americans make at the Mexico border that immediately flag them for deeper inspection. Second, what the law actually says about what border agents can and cannot do to you, because most people have no idea how different your rights are at the border compared to a normal traffic stop. And third, I'm giving you the word-for-word script, the exact phrases to use so that you protect yourself, cooperate legally, and get through that crossing without handing agents more than they are legally entitled to. If you're crossing the border this week, this year, ever, do not leave without watching this entire video. Let's start with the mistakes, and these are not small errors. These are the exact behaviors and statements that border agents are trained to look for as red flags. Mistake number 1 is over-explaining yourself before they even ask. This is the number 1 mistake Americans make, and it comes from a good place. People want to seem cooperative, so the moment they pull up to the booth, they start talking. Hey, we were just visiting family, we're coming back, we didn't buy anything. Well, we bought some food, but that doesn't count, right? And we were only there for 2 days. Stop. Right there. Here's what you need to understand about a border crossing interaction. CBP officers, that's Customs and Border Protection, are trained interviewers. Every word you say voluntarily is information they are using to assess inconsistencies. The more you talk, the more chances you give them to find a contradiction. If you say, "We didn't buy anything," and they find a receipt in your bag, that is a false declaration. That is a federal offense under Title 19 of the United States Code, even if the item was worth $5. The rule is simple. Answer what they ask. Nothing more. Short, honest, complete answers only. Mistake number 2 is saying, "I have nothing to hide," when asked about a search. I hear this constantly, and it breaks my heart legally. Someone asks the officer if they have to allow a search. The officer says, "Do you have something to hide?" And the person says, "No, go ahead, I have nothing to hide." That statement just gave the officer full consent, and consent at the border waives enormous legal protections. Here is what most people do not know. At a port of entry, which is the legal term for a border crossing, CBP officers have extraordinary authority that is fundamentally different from what a police officer has during a regular traffic stop. Under the border search exception to the 4th Amendment, confirmed repeatedly by the Supreme Court, routine searches at a port of entry do not require a warrant, probable cause, or even reasonable suspicion. This is established law going back to the founding of this country, affirmed in cases like United States versus Ramsey in 1977 and United States versus Flores-Montano in 2004. So understand this clearly. In many situations, they can search your vehicle without your consent, but your consent, or your "I have nothing to hide," can expand what they search and how far they go. Never give consent beyond what is legally required. Mistake number 3 is lying or guessing on your customs declaration. This one sends people to federal court. When you return from Mexico to the United States, you must complete a CBP declaration, either on paper or through the CBP One app. You must declare all items acquired abroad. U.S. citizens returning from Mexico get an $800 duty-free exemption for personal goods and gifts, 1 liter of alcohol per person over 21 every 30 days. Those are your legal allowances. What gets people in trouble is not exceeding the limit, it's lying about it. Under 19 U.S. Code Section 1592, making a false or fraudulent declaration to CBP is a federal civil and potentially criminal violation. You can face fines, seizure of goods, and secondary inspections that last for hours. And here's the psychological trap. People guess. They can't remember exactly what they spent, so they round down. They forget about that bottle of tequila in the trunk. They don't declare cash over $10,000 because they didn't know that was required. Declare everything. If you're unsure, declare it anyway. A CBP officer deciding if an item is dutiable is a much better situation than a CBP officer deciding whether you committed a false declaration. Now let's talk about what the law actually says, because this is where it gets complicated and where most people are completely in the dark. The Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures. In normal American life, during a traffic stop, at your home, on the street, law enforcement generally needs a warrant, probable cause, or minimum reasonable suspicion to search you or your property. At the border, that changes dramatically. The Supreme Court established a doctrine called the border search exception. The foundational logic is this: the government has a compelling sovereign interest in controlling what and who enters and exits the country. That interest, courts have ruled, justifies a significant reduction in your normal Fourth Amendment protections. Here is what that means practically. Your vehicle. CBP can conduct a routine search of your car at a port of entry without any suspicion at all. In United States versus Flores-Montano in 2004, the Supreme Court upheld CBP's authority to dismantle and search a vehicle's gas tank at the border. No warrant, no probable cause, no suspicion required. Your luggage and personal belongings fall under the same rule: routine inspection without suspicion, confirmed in United States versus Eziraku. Your bags, your clothing, items in your car, all searchable as part of routine customs inspection. Your body is a different matter. Standard pat-downs are routine, but more invasive searches, strip searches, body cavity searches, require reasonable suspicion under United States versus Montoya de Hernandez in 1985. That is an important protection. If an agent attempts an invasive body search without justification, that is potentially unconstitutional. Now here is something that shocks most Americans when they learn it. CBP's authority does not stop at the physical borderline. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, and confirmed by the Supreme Court in United States versus Martinez-Fuerte in 1976, CBP has authority to operate checkpoints and conduct certain stops up to 100 miles inland from any U.S. border or coastline. This 100-mile zone covers roughly 2/3 of the entire U.S. population, including cities like Los Angeles, Houston, New York, Chicago, and Miami. Within this zone, Border Patrol can stop vehicles at permanent checkpoints and ask about citizenship. However, and this is critical, roving patrol stops away from fixed checkpoints still require reasonable, articulable suspicion. The Supreme Court made this clear in United States versus Brignoni-Ponce in 1975. They cannot simply pull you over 50 miles from the border with no reason at all. At a fixed checkpoint, you must answer questions about citizenship. You do not have to consent to a full vehicle search without reasonable suspicion. Now let's talk about your phone, because this is the hottest legal battleground at the border right now, and you need to pay close attention. CBP currently distinguishes between two types of device searches. A basic search is when an agent manually scrolls through your phone, looks at photos, reads messages. Under current CBP policy, this can be done without any suspicion whatsoever. An advanced search is when an agent connects forensic software to your device to extract data, including deleted files and encrypted content. CBP policy requires reasonable suspicion of criminal activity or a national security concern for that level of search. In fiscal year 2025, CBP conducted over 55,000 device searches at ports of entry. That number is climbing every quarter. Courts are currently split on this issue. The Fourth Circuit in United States versus Kolsuz held that forensic phone searches require reasonable suspicion. The Ninth Circuit in United States versus Cano limited warrantless searches to digital contraband only. The 11th Circuit went the other way, holding no suspicion is required even for forensic searches. As of March 2026, the EFF and ACLU filed an amicus brief in the Third Circuit arguing CBP needs a warrant for all device searches. This case could force the Supreme Court to resolve the question once and for all. The law is unsettled, your phone is vulnerable, and I'll give you the script to handle this in just a moment. One thing that is absolutely clear, though, is U.S. citizens cannot be denied entry to their own country. Full stop. You can be detained, questioned, have items seized, but a U.S. citizen cannot be turned away at the border. Now here is your script. Write this down, screenshot this, put it in your phone before you cross. When you pull up to the primary inspection booth and the agent asks where you are coming from, say, Mexico, sir, or Mexico, ma'am, and the specific city if asked. Short and honest. When they ask how long you were there, say the exact number of days, nothing more. When they ask the purpose of your trip, say tourism, or visiting family, or business. One phrase. Do not elaborate. When they ask what you are bringing back, say, I have my completed declaration form. I am declaring these items. The total value of goods purchased is approximately this amount. Do not say nothing if you bought anything. Do not guess at values. Do not volunteer information about items that weren't asked about. Now, if they ask to search your vehicle, here is what you say. Slowly, calmly, and clearly. Officer, I understand you have authority to conduct inspections here. I want to be cooperative. I do not consent to any search beyond what is legally required at this port of entry. I am happy to answer your questions. I need to be legally honest with you here. At a port of entry, CBP may have the authority to search your vehicle as a routine matter regardless of your consent under the border search exception. Your statement is not guaranteed to stop the search, but it does two critical things. It goes on the record, including on any body or dash camera, that you did not consent voluntarily, and that matters for your attorney later. And it signals to the officer that you are legally informed, which often changes the entire dynamic of the encounter. If they ask to see your phone or tell you to unlock your device, here is exactly what you say. Officer, I am aware that CBP has authority to conduct basic searches at the border. I want to cooperate with lawful requests. However, I do not consent to any search beyond what is legally required, and I do not consent to any advanced forensic search of this device without reasonable suspicion documented in writing. Then, if they insist on a basic manual review, you can unlock the phone yourself rather than handing over your passcode. This is a protection recommended by both the ACLU and the Electronic Frontier Foundation. You control what the agent physically accesses rather than giving them the master pew to everything on your device. If they threaten to confiscate your phone, they can do that. CBP can detain a device for up to 5 days under current policy. If that happens, do not argue. Say, I understand. I want a receipt for any item seized and the name and badge number of the officer conducting this action. If you are sent to secondary inspection, remember this. Being sent to secondary does not mean you are arrested. It does not mean you have done anything wrong. Secondary inspection is routine and happens for many reasons, including random selection. When they ask you questions in secondary, say, I am happy to cooperate. Before I answer further questions, I would like to know, am I free to go or am I being detained? And am I under arrest? If you are detained but not under arrest, you have the right to remain silent beyond answering citizenship questions. U.S. citizens must confirm citizenship. Beyond that, you do not have to answer questions about your political beliefs, your social media accounts, your work, or your personal relationships. If you are placed under arrest, say, I am invoking my right to remain silent and my right to an attorney. I will not answer any further questions without counsel present. Before every crossing, know your declaration obligations cold. You must declare all goods purchased or acquired in Mexico, including gifts. You must declare all food items. Many fruits, meats, and cheeses are restricted or prohibited. You must report any currency or monetary instruments totaling $10,000 or more. That is a federal reporting requirement under 31 U.S.C. Section 5316, and failing to report is a separate crime from simply having the money. Declare all medications, especially controlled substances, and always carry your prescription. And never bring firearms or ammunition across. They are strictly prohibited in Mexico, and the legal consequences on both sides of the border are severe. If you believe your rights were violated at the crossing, here is what you do. the moment you are through. First, document everything immediately. Write down or record a voice memo with the date, time, port of entry, lane number, officer badge number if you saw it, exactly what was said, what was searched, and what, if anything, was seized. Memory fades fast. Do this within minutes of clearing the border. Second, get a receipt for any seized property. CBP is required to provide documentation for seized items. Demand it. That receipt is the foundation of any future legal challenge. Third, file a complaint if warranted. CBP has an internal office of professional responsibility, and complaints can be filed at cbp.gov. The DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties also accepts complaints about constitutional violations at the border. These complaints create records that matter in litigation. Fourth, if the violation was serious, a strip search without suspicion, an advanced forensic search of their device without documented reasonable suspicion, an unreasonably long detention, or discriminatory questioning, contact a criminal defense or civil rights attorney immediately. The ACLU of Texas has specific border rights resources and can provide referrals. And if CBP conducted an advanced forensic search of your device and found evidence that led to criminal charges, your attorney should immediately evaluate whether that search exceeded the scope permitted under your circuit's interpretation of the border search exception. In circuits that require reasonable suspicion for advanced searches, improperly obtained evidence may be suppressible in court. Let me bring this home. The U.S. Mexico border in 2026 is the most scrutinized crossing in the world. CBP authority is real, it is broad, and it is different from anything you experience in the interior of the United States. The Fourth Amendment does not disappear at the border, but it is significantly reduced. Your protection is knowledge. The three mistakes, over-explaining, consenting unnecessarily, and making false declarations, are completely avoidable when you know the law. The script I gave you today is not about being difficult. It's about being legally intelligent, and there is a very big difference between the two. So here is what I need from you right now. Save this video. This script needs to be in your phone before you cross. Screenshot it and keep it in your camera roll. Then tell me in the comments, have you been sent to secondary inspection? Have you had a phone searched at the border? Your story helps me understand what people are actually facing out there, and it helps me build the next video. And subscribe and turn on notifications because next week I'm covering what happens when ICE sets up interior checkpoints, what they can ask, what you do not have to answer, and the exact words to use. That video is going to be just as important as this one. The law is complicated. Your rights are real. Know both. I'll see you in the next one.